Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take these really complex frameworks, sort of crack them open, and pull out the absolute essentials for you.
That's the plan.
And today, wow, we are diving into something pretty advanced. It's an integrated and honestly highly recommended therapeutic model that uses, yes, Lego bricks. But trust me on this, it's way beyond just, building spaceships.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking at a framework called Lego therapy, constructing the unified story of Harris Gamos. And when you dig into the source material on this one, the first thing that hits you is just how ambitious it is.
Right.
It's not just play, it's this deep theoretical structure. It manages to connect something really ancient, like serious philosophical concepts with very modern neurological models. And then it brings it all down to practical, hands-on therapeutic techniques.
Quite a mix.
It really is. It's this blend of, well, intellectual and clinical thinking that, frankly, deserves a proper look.
I have to admit, when I first encountered the idea of connecting, say, a kid's decision-making process to ancient Greek philosophy via Lego, I kind of thought, okay, maybe this is stretching things a bit.
It sounds like a leap. Yeah.
So how does the source material actually justify that? We've got this pretty detailed set of sources explaining why this model is considered so effective. And our mission today, for you listening, is to really understand the four core reasons, the pillars that make this whole complex thing apparently work so well together. How does it take a concept as big as Heroes Gamos, a sacred marriage, and turn that into one single story that works for a child, boy or girl, and their parents? That's what we're going to try and dissect. Okay, let's kick off with what the sources really highlight as maybe the biggest achievement of this framework.
It's universality. Its main success seems to be creating one single unified story.
That's right, one narrative. And crucially, this story isn't split based on gender or age. It applies right across the board to boys, to girls, and importantly, to the adults involved, whether that's parents or the therapists themselves.
And the absolute key to making that work, the foundation, is the philosophy underneath it all. If you want a story that guides everyone in the family towards growth, you can't really start with division, can you?
No, that makes sense.
So the framework, it very explicitly roots itself in a philosophy of complementarity and union. They really make a point of avoiding concepts like competition or division or, struggle between two essential parts.
So less about conflict, more about fitting together.
Exactly. The whole focus is on how different elements are, maybe even designed to interlock and work together as a team.
Okay, and that idea, that interlocking, brings us right to the philosophical core of the whole model, this concept of hieros gamos. Now, for anyone not familiar, that phrase, it sounds, well, pretty heavy for therapy involving plastic bricks.
It does sound grand, yeah.
Can you maybe spend a moment defining it? Why is this the right anchor point, according to the sources?
Sure. So hieros gamos literally means sacred marriage. And in, classical mythology, psychology, it refers to the joining of complementary forces, often big cosmic ones like sky and earth or maybe structure and chaos.
Okay.
But the specific point is that they join to form a unified and creative whole. It's about creation through synergy, through bringing different things together. The framework uses this idea, not really in a romantic sense, obviously, but to show that healthy psychological growth needs two distinct elements to combine.
To achieve something bigger.
Exactly. To achieve a greater, more functional outcome than either one could manage on its own. It's like the architectural plan for success, psychologically speaking.
Right. Okay. So the goal isn't just to be, say, imaginative on its own or disciplined on its own, but to successfully merge those two. So if Heros Gamos is the blueprint, what are the two specific forces that need to marry in the child's everyday life? The framework seems to translate this big philosophical idea into the child's world through something they call the universal mission.
Yes, and the sources are quite clear on defining this mission. Creative growth, they say, requires the essential union of two specific forces, and the framework gives them simple, personified names. Imagination, which they call Dimion, and integrity, which gets the name Tom.
Dimion and Tom.
Dimion is, the spark new ideas, dreams, creativity, seeing possibilities. Tom represents the structure, the honesty, the trust, the sort of follow-through needed to actually make those ideas happen responsibly.
And I noticed the source material is really, really specific about this next point. Dimi and Tom are defined as complementary. They're never opposites.
Crucial distinction. Absolutely.
Let's dig into that a bit. What's the practical difference? What does it look like when that union fails in a child's actions? And how does thinking of them as complementary help fix it?
Well, that's really where the model shows its strength, I think. Imagine a failure state. If Dimian imagination acts alone, you get these wild, maybe brilliant, but totally ungrounded ideas.
Like building a huge tower on a tiny base.
Exactly. The child wants to build a 10-foot Lego tower on just one brick. The idea is grand, that's Dimian, but the execution completely lacks stability, maybe even honesty about, basic physics. It's a lack of tom or integrity. So the tower collapses. What happens then? Frustration, self-doubt, maybe giving up.
Okay, I see that. And the other way around. Tom without Dimian.
If Tom acts alone, you get integrity, sure, but without imagination. The child might perfectly, meticulously follow the Lego instructions step by step.
Which isn't necessarily bad.
Not bad, no, but it results in a perfectly stable structure that's maybe completely unoriginal or even joyless. There's no spark, no creativity, it's just built.
So the therapy aims to show they absolutely need each other. Dimian brings the vision, the what if, and Tom makes sure the foundation is solid enough, reliable enough to actually support that vision.
Precisely. You need both to create anything worthwhile that actually lasts. When they unite successfully, they achieve a kind of mini Hyros Gamos right there on the playmat, or in making a choice. The structure has to be true, solid, reliable. That's Tom. But that structure also needs to serve a unique, creative, maybe even novel idea. That's Dimian.
Okay, this is where I think the framework really shines in terms of making it relatable. How on earth do you explain this abstract idea, the union of Dimian and Tom, to, say, a 5-year-old?
Right, it's abstract.
You use the tools they have right there, the Lego analogy.
You got it. The therapist uses the physical reality of the bricks and the little figures to make the abstract concrete. The analogy is pretty simple, but quite profound in context. It's about two distinct Lego figures coming together.
Like partners.
Exactly. The core story, as laid out in the sources, is that these two figures, Dimian and Tom, were specifically meant maybe by a friendly giant or God or whatever guiding force resonates with the family. They were meant to build something wonderful as a team.
Ah, so the focus shifts immediately. It's not, did I build the best thing?
Right. It shifts away from individual performance or competition.
Towards, did we build it together? And was it built well, built honestly? Did it last?
Exactly. Shared, collaborative, and fundamentally ethical creation.
That's really powerful. It gives every child a meaningful role, doesn't it? Regardless of whether they're naturally a big ideas person or more of a careful builder.
Mm-hmm.
So the application becomes instantly practical. Every single day, the child's mission, whether they're facing a tricky social situation, a puzzle, or just, getting dressed in the morning, is to successfully pair Dimian, thinking creatively about options, and Tom, making honest, solid choices and putting in the effort to sort of build their day successfully.
And you see how that loops right back to the philosophy. By pairing that creativity with trust and integrity, the child is, in a small way, echoing that ancient universal pattern of creation we talked about, the Hyros Gamos.
So when they choose to be honest about, say, dropping a friend's toy that's Tom, instead of making up a wild story which would be Dimian running unchecked,
Right.
they're not just following a rule. They're actually achieving a successful micro-union of Dimian and Tom. They're building their day's structure reliably.
And the bricks themselves become these tangible, holdable representations of these abstract forces, which is absolutely essential for kids, especially younger ones who are still in that concrete operational stage of thinking. They need to touch it, see it.
Okay, that sets the stage incredibly well. We have this unified goal, the successful sacred marriage of Dimian and Tom. But here's where it gets really interesting. If the ultimate goal is this single, unified story, the sources point out something fascinating. The path we take to get there isn't always the same neurologically.
That's a critical layer.
The framework actually acknowledges that the methods kids use to achieve this Dimian-Tom union aren't identical for everyone. Which brings us neatly to part 2. How this model integrates what the sources describe as dual decision-making paths based on complementary neurological data.
Precisely. And if we connect this back, the genius here is that the framework manages to keep the unified philosophical goal Dimian plus Tom totally intact,
Okay.
while also respecting and incorporating the specialized neurological processes that are often observed, maybe more typically in male and female development patterns. These different decision-making paths, though distinct, are explicitly shown as ways to reach that same single end. Integrity working hand-in-hand with imagination.
All right, let's break that down. Let's start with Tom's path, which the sources often link to sort of the boy's logic. Now, The sources get quite technical here. They say Tom's decision tree is often managed by the brain's stress pathways. Are we talking like fight or flight?
Hmm.
How is that helpful for a kid deciding how to play nicely?
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? It's maybe better thought of as a refinement or a specific application of those stress response systems. We're talking about neurological systems that are highly optimized for things like rapid assessment, quick risk evaluation, and seizing an immediate need or opportunity.
So speed is key.
Speed and external focus, yeah. The stress pathways involving adrenaline, cortisol, they aren't inherently bad. They're actually incredibly efficient for engaging with the world and reacting quickly. Tom's internal neural team, as the framework might put it, guides him rapidly to choose between two really essential, often immediate needs: the need for belonging and the drive for opportunity.
Okay, belonging versus opportunity. Can we make that concrete? Like a 5-year-old on the playground. What does that conflict look like if it's driven by these fast stress pathways?
Sure, let's imagine two quick scenarios. Opportunity. A ball rolls towards a busy path. The stress pathway does a super fast calculation. Maybe low real risk right now, high potential reward or praise if he gets it back quickly. He acts fast, maybe without checking thoroughly. That's opportunity driven. Belonging. His friends are building a cool Lego fort, but he sees a major flaw in their design. The stress pathway weighs things up instantly. High risk of being excluded or criticized if he points out the flaw, versus the strong, immediate need to belong to the group.
So he might.
He might immediately suppress his own judgment, his integrity, Tom, just to stay in the group. Or conversely, he might aggressively push for the opportunity to lead and fix it, potentially risking kindness to assert his idea.
Ah, okay. That pairing belonging and opportunity seems really crucial then. If he jumps at an opportunity without thinking about belonging, about the group impact.
He risks being brave, but maybe unkind, or just plain reckless.
Right. And if he prioritizes belonging so much, he never takes an ethical stand or seizes a chance to help.
He might become too passive, missing chances for positive, decisive action. Tom needs to be both brave and kind.
So the therapeutic goal for understanding Tom's path isn't to stop him being decisive.
Exactly. It's recognizing that the speed, the decisiveness, it's a feature of his neurology, not necessarily a bug. The therapy helps him learn to navigate that quick calculation so he successfully remains both brave and kind, which is the real expression of Tom, of integrity in action while also maintaining good sportsmanship, good relating.
So refining the rapid assessment towards ethical outcomes, rather than just trying to make him slow down, which might not even work well.
Often, yeah, it's about channeling that energy effectively.
Okay, now let's look at the complementary side. Jemima's path, framed as the girl's logic. This pathway, according to the sources, uses totally different brain chemistry to get to that same successful union of Dimion and Tom. What's her mechanism?
Yeah, it's fascinating. The sources indicate Jemima often utilizes her brain's capacity to deploy serotonin, often called the feel-good chemical, but it does much more than that when she's initiating decision-making.
Serotonin. How did that change the process?
Well, serotonin is heavily involved in things like regulating impulse control, assessing longer-term consequences, and facilitating forward planning. So using it in decision-making tends to sort of shift the internal clock. It moves away from immediate, rapid response towards more thorough consideration.
Okay, hold on. If Jemima is using serotonin to plan and be patient, doesn't that risk just reinforcing old stereotypes? Girls plan, boys act.
That's a really important question, and it's something the framework seems very aware of and actively works against. It frames Jemima's patience not as passive waiting, but as an active, powerful deployment of a neurological resource. A resource that helps ensure the hieros gamos, the final build or decision, is sturdy and well considered.
So it's a strength, not a lack of speed.
Precisely. The impact of using serotonin this way is presented as complementary to Tom's stress-driven path. It facilitates better planning, thinking things through more deeply, noticing nuances and feelings, both her own and others, and showing, generally, more patience. On average, this approach makes her more likely to avoid some of the quick risks Tom might take because she's taking the time to assess a wider range of options and consequences.
Which ultimately leads to a potentially higher quality of integrity in the final outcome.
Often, yes. It ensures the build is sound before committing.
And her method gets this lovely framing using the Gemini wordplay. How does that reinforce the main mission, Dimion and Tom uniting, while still describing her different process?
The Gemini or twin metaphor is really neat. It represents two internal helpers working together inside her mind in synergy. One twin is directly linked to Dimion, that's the imagination, brainstorming, thinking outside the box part.
Generating possibilities.
Right. And the other twin is linked to Tom. That's the planning, the logic, the integrity check. This twin meticulously assesses the possibilities Demine comes up with, checks if the structure makes sense, ensures the parts really fit before she commits to the action or the build.
So it's still Dimian and Tom working together, but the process is more internalized, more step-by-step, patient.
Exactly. It maintains that universal goal Demine and Tom must unite, but it describes a different, often more internalized and patience-driven way of getting there. It validates her sometimes slower, more comprehensive approach as a really valuable skill set, essential for high-quality, thoughtful building or decision-making.
It's actually quite brilliant how they map these, fundamental neurological tendencies onto these two characters, Tom and Gemma.
Yeah,
They keep pointing them towards the exact same philosophical goal.
it really is.
It seems to completely sidestep any judgment that one way is right and the other wrong.
Because they aren't. One style is highly effective for rapid response and seizing opportunity. The other is highly effective for detailed planning and ensuring stability. Both are needed.
Which raises a final question for this section then. If the paths are different, how does the framework make sure both kids, regardless of their default style, reach the highest standard of growth? Like, how do they both become good at both imagining and building with integrity?
Well, the sources are clear. The answer isn't just sticking to your own path, it's mutual learning.
And that brings us perfectly into part 3, because the therapeutic conclusion here isn't just do your thing. It insists that since both Tom's path and Jemiah's path successfully lead to the same goal that Hyros Gamos of Dimian and Tom, the framework actively pushes for boys and girls to look at each other's strengths and learn from them.
Yes, it's built right in.
This feels like it moves the therapy beyond just, understanding yourself into real interpersonal skill building.
Absolutely. The structure of the whole narrative makes this mutual learning feel natural, even necessary for the daily mission's success. The therapist uses Tom's and Jemiah's different approaches not just as descriptors, but as active models for refinement.
How so? Give us an example.
Okay, so the sources detail that boys who might typically rely more on Tom's path can learn the power they see demonstrated in Jemiah's approach. The pausing, the imagining of consequences, the choosing with real care and patience.
How does that help, Tom?
It helps temper that stress pathway tendency towards maybe impulsive action, the leap before you look, which can sometimes compromise the kindness aspect, or even the structural integrity of what they're doing. They learn to consciously borrow Jemiah's pause and plan mode.
Okay, let's walk through a quick scenario. How might Tom benefit from seeing Jemiah's method with actual Legos?
Right. Imagine Tom is building a Lego car. His impulse, driven by opportunity and speed, might be to grab the first wheels he sees and stick them on. Done. Fast. Jemiah, maybe working alongside him or just observing, might use her process. She might pause, pick up the wheels, compare them to the heavy brick body Tom's built, maybe even test fit them. She might then point out, those wheels seem a bit small for such a heavy car. Maybe it won't roll well, or it might tip over.
She's doing the planning and integrity check.
Exactly. By watching her process the pause, the test, the assessment of scale and consequence, Tom learns that sometimes the speed of his stress pathway needs to yield to the structural patience that Jemiah's serotonin-influenced planning offers. He learns how to apply her Gemini twin assessment externally to his own actions.
That makes perfect sense. And then conversely, how do girls, perhaps more aligned with Jemiah's path, benefit from seeing Tom's approach?
Yeah, it's a two-way street. For a child who naturally leans into Jemiah's path, that excellent impulse control provided by serotonin can sometimes maybe tip over into overplanning.
Analysis paralysis.
Exactly. Or hesitation, or even anxiety about committing to action because they're still weighing options. They might spend 10 minutes designing the perfect Lego house on paper, but miss the chance to actually build and play with it during the session.
So they learn from Tom.
They learn the value of sometimes just acting, the value of that swift, opportunity-driven approach Tom embodies. They see that sometimes decisive action guided by Tom's rapid assessment of an immediate ethical need or opportunity is exactly what's required.
They learn. They can borrow Tom's speed.
Yes, borrow his speed to overcome that analysis paralysis. To apply their Dimian creativity through decisive execution, not just endless planning. It's about finding balance, teaching both kids they can consciously access and switch between these neurological modes depending on what the situation requires.
This focus on practical application is really where the Lego bricks themselves become more than just symbols, right? They become these active, hands-on therapeutic tools. The sources are very specific about the Lego therapist's role here. It's quite literal.
Hmm.
Helping kids use the actual blocks to physically plan and build their daily routines, their choices, their solutions to problems.
Mm.
Can you describe how that works in a session?
This is really the nuts and bolts, the practical core. Let's take a common struggle, like a chaotic morning routine, or maybe an integrity lapse, like telling a lie.
Okay.
The therapist might ask the child, okay, your morning routine is a mission. How do Dimian and Tom build it successfully together? They might use different colored bricks to represent different parts. Maybe red bricks are the must-do structures, that's Tom, eating breakfast, brushing teeth. And maybe blue bricks are the creative choice points, that's Dimian. Which game can I play for 5 minutes? What fun socks should I wear?
So the child literally builds a plan for their morning out of Legos.
Physically structures it, yes. And if the issue is lying, which is fundamentally a failure of Tom, of integrity, the therapist might ask them to build two versions of what happened. First, build the story the way Dimian told it when he was running wild, meaning construct the lie.
And how would that look in bricks?
Often the lie involves structurally unstable parts, maybe wobbly connections, things that don't quite fit or balance. Then the therapist says, okay, now take it apart. Build the story again, but this time with Tom in charge. They have to construct the true sequence of events using bricks that must be structurally sound and fit together properly.
Wow.
The physical act of building forces them to practice making those choices, to solve problems when their lie structure doesn't match reality, and to express feelings, maybe frustration, when a structure built without integrity collapses. It grounds the whole abstract narrative in tangible 3D experience.
That provides incredible feedback, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The unstable lie literally falls apart, showing the failure of integrity, while the truthful structure, built with Tom, stands firm.
It's very direct feedback. And furthermore, the sources emphasize something else really powerful. Using Lego in this shared, often collaborative setting acts as a theory of mind, Tom.
Mirror. Theory of mind. Remind us quickly.
Theory of mind, yeah, it's our ability to understand that other people have their own beliefs, intentions, feelings, perspectives that might be different from ours. It's crucial for social interaction.
Okay, so how does building with plastic bricks help mirror that?
Because they're often cooperating, maybe building one project together or working side by side with shared bricks or a shared goal, they're almost forced to see how their building partner sees the world, or at least sees the building task, how they structure the solution.
So if Tom quickly builds a ramp because he sees an opportunity for a jump,
Right. Driven by his path.
and Jemina, next to him, carefully builds a support structure underneath it because she's predicting, based on her planning, that the ramp will collapse.
Yes. In that moment, they see their partner's actions aren't random or wrong. They're driven by a valid internal logic, a different way of approaching the problem. The Lego project becomes this physical mirror, reflecting their partner's unique style, their intentions, back at them, which naturally encourages sharing, negotiation, cooperation.
And that shared experience, that's got to be the critical reinforcement for the whole framework.
Absolutely.
They learn, not just by being told, but by doing it together, that they're different neurological styles.
Yeah.
Tom's quick stress pathway assessments versus Jemina's patient, serotonin-supported planning are both valuable. More than valuable, they're designed specifically to fit together, not compete.
Exactly. The difference is stop being just sources of frustration about, why did you go so fast or why are you taking so long? And they become sources of potential synergy. They learn that Dimian needs Tom and Tom needs Dimian. And they learn that the specialized approaches of Tom and Jemina are simply the best routes for them to achieve that essential synergy.
So the overall effectiveness really comes from this integration. The story wraps up by saying, look, two minds, two styles, two sets of skills. Dimian, Tom, and the ways Tom and Jemina get there. That's what makes the best team for building a day or a solution that's actually built to last. It reinforces that their individual differences aren't flaws needing correction, but specialized tools, perfectly shaped to interlock, allowing that sacred marriage to happen. That feels like an incredibly empowering conclusion for any child, especially one maybe struggling with self-worth or fitting in.
It really does. It fundamentally reframes development, doesn't it? It gives them this clear map that validates how they operate while gently guiding them towards this unified goal of creative, ethical growth. #, outro. So Just to kind of synthesize how remarkable this framework is, according to the sources, it pulls off this tricky feat of weaving really deep ancient philosophical concepts, specifically hieros gamos, with very specific modern neurological insights. Understanding how stress pathways versus serotonin use shape decision-making rhythm.
Yeah, that blend is impressive.
And then it wraps it all up in a practical, genuinely relatable story using Lego figures. It feels conceptually really robust, but also functionally quite simple for a therapist to actually use. And it gives them this narrative that applies to everyone.
Absolutely. And for parents, for kids, it provides this simple but also quite profound way to grasp human growth. Not as this constant battle between different personality types or boys versus girls, but as this necessary constructive union of complementary forces.
Hmm.
Creativity, Dimion, and trust or integrity, Tom.
Mm.
When you start seeing everyday life as a mission to unite those two forces,
Hmm.
you kind of shift the focus, don't you? Away from just frustrating behavior management towards something more like empowering character development.
And crucially, I think it reframes the struggle of making choices by validating the neurology underneath. For the child often using Tom's path, that intense, sometimes stressful, fast-paced experience is validated. It's seen as a natural way of choosing between belonging and opportunity as long as that process leads to being both brave and kind.
Right.
And for the child often using Jemima's path, the patience, the planning, sometimes the hesitation, that's validated too. It's framed as a necessary function of how their brain works, using serotonin to ensure thoroughness and stability. It gives real purpose to their innate style.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening? The sources seem to reveal a pretty deep truth here. The goal isn't to say, eliminate those stress pathways in decision-making. Tom needs that drive to be decisive, to be brave, to seize opportunities.
Can't get rid of it.
No. The goal is to integrate that drive with the planning, the patience, the foresight demonstrated by Jemima. It's about finding that sweet spot, the hieros gamos, between the immediate opportunity and the long-term structural integrity of your actions.
The framework successfully nails down imagination, dimion, and integrity, Tom, as these essential interlocking parts for childhood growth. They form the hieros gamos needed for a functioning young person.
But maybe if we take that hieros gamos principle beyond just childhood, think about this as you go about your own day. What other foundational concepts in your life might need to be seen not as opposites, but as essential complementary pairs? Pairs that absolutely must unite for the sacred marriage of a functioning, fulfilling adult life.
That's a good question.
Maybe think about, I don't know, the union of ambition and acceptance, or logic and intuition, discipline and play.
Right, there could be many pairs.
The core principle, finding these unified, synergistic pairs, it probably extends far beyond the Lego mat, guiding us towards successful, creative, and ethical lives. But that's probably a deep dive for another time.